Okay, I'm started recording. I will call this meeting of the Six-Town Regional Planning Board Finances, Transportation Facilities Subcommittee to order. We are meeting via Zoom due to the ongoing pandemic, and I am recording this meeting for Zoom. Jane, you're taking the minutes for today?
I am. And
Okay.
you'll send me the recording to back me up, right?
Yes, I will.
Okay,
Yes, I
thank
will.
you.
Okay.
That's so helpful.
I know.
Yes.
I couldn't do it
yes.
otherwise.
Okay, and because we're doing this remotely, we need to have a roll call attendance. So when I say your name, just say present. Jane Dutcher,
Present.
David Young,
Present.
Lynn Reynolds,
Present.
and Mike Naughton present. We're hoping that Michelle Geruso and Alan Genovese will join us, but I have not heard from either one of them, so we'll see.
Well, I believe Allen's end of town has electricity, and he reached out to me today to remind me of the meeting, so I'm hopeful he'll be here.
Oh, okay, okay. Well, we will keep our fingers crossed. But we do have a number of things to do, so I don't want to wait too long.
Yeah.
And let's see, we don't have any minutes because I think we approved the minutes of our last meeting at our larger meeting. So we'll move right on to the updated charts, which you should all have a copy of. And I think just for the record, I should probably explain what's going on here. And maybe the easiest way to do that is for me to try to share my screen. So let me do that. Okay, can you all see what look like a couple of spreadsheets here?
Yes.
Okay. Basically, what this is when I set out to try to do rough 5-year projections for the combined district, I decided to start with chart number 50 in the consultant's report, and you'll see that here on your left. And when I did that, one of the things I needed for the projections was town by town projections for remote local contribution for the Chapter 70 formula, which we had gotten copies of sort of after the fact from Mark Abrahams and in a document that he had received from DESE. And so I went over there to get those and discovered that the numbers were a little different. And you'll see that document over here on the right. And notice that on the left, if we look at Gill for, he calls it minimum required district contribution, this number here is 1,008,681. Over here on the right, for Gill, the number is 1,004,194. So it's not a big difference, but it is different. And I wanted to be able to, and the thing about the chart on the right is that it provides corresponding numbers for the following fiscal years. So I wanted to be able to, obviously, if I'm doing 5-year projections, I wanted to have numbers for the following years. So I figured I better, that seemed like the numbers to use. On the other hand, they weren't the numbers that were in the consultant's report. And so how was I going to justify that? So I emailed Mark And after a little bit of back and forth, he basically said that he had no idea where the numbers in chart 50 came from, that the numbers in, hang on one second. Oh, I got Alan on the phone. Hang on one second, guys. Alan, what's up? Do you have the agenda? Alan is always in the agenda. Okay, I tell you what, maybe I can email it to you real quick. Okay,
I got it, Mike.
David, you have it? You want to
Yeah.
email Alan real quick? He can't
I'm doing it right
find the
now.
link.
The only problem with this is I'm gonna have to add this email to somebody's discovery of all my emails with Alan.
Hopefully it won't incriminate you. Yeah, you guys are having an exciting time over there. I see. Okay, well, thank you, David.
Yeah, I think I'm scheduled for a couple more beatings and then things will settle down.
Mm.
Well, good luck.
Thanks.
You're talking about the weather. It sure sounded like an express train.
Yes, it did. I tell you what, let's
Hey,
give Alan
Michael?
a couple minutes. Yeah.
Would this difference really matter to the purpose here? I mean, my experience, and I'm impressed by your knowledge of the minimum contribution and this whole backstory, but I noticed Warwick's minimum contribution greatly reduced because of the fact we send so many kids to tech school.
Yes.
And I think that probably contributes to what's going on, why Leiden, who have a smaller percentage of Pioneer budget, have this bigger number, or as part of it. So, I mean, it's just going to have to be a projection, and I don't think we should worry too much about de minimis differences because probably neither number will obtain.
Well, on the one hand, I agree completely. And the difference is not big. I mean, $4,000 out of $1 million is well less than a percentage point. Hi, Alan.
Hi, I gotta close this. I so apologize. I had so many emails that it was pushed off like 2 pages. I had to go back to try to find your email.
Okay. Maybe I
Pin
should,
it to the top when you first get it.
Or I email things like that to myself to keep them on top.
Yeah, I
Forward it
guess
to
I
you.
should. I kept looking and then I did a search and I'm like, I'm literally it's like 80 emails in.
well, you
I
made it.
believe that.
You made it. Okay. So, and we haven't gotten too far. But so I tell you what, why don't I just give a brief recap? Alan, we're looking at the corrected charts. And
Okay.
I'm sharing my screen. And on the left, I've got chart number 50 from the consultant's report. On the right, I've got the spreadsheet that I got from Mark Abrahams after we received the report, when I asked him for town by town breakouts for the local minimum contributions by town. And
Okay.
I was just saying that if you look on chart 50, you see that for FY21, Gill, for example, shows 1,008,681, but over on the town by town spreadsheet, Gill is 1,004,194. And so it's not a big difference, but it is a difference. David was
Yep.
just commenting that, was asking basically if this is a difference that really matters, because it's just a projection anyway, and we're really looking at the local contribution for, in this case, Gil Montague. But the local contributions of our 6 towns for either Gil Montague or Pioneer are greatly affected by the number of students from our towns who go to Franklin County Tech instead. And I was about to say that I agree completely with what David's saying. On the one hand, that that these numbers are projections, and they do depend on Franklin County Tech enrollment. And those are both things that, are kind of guesses anyway. So we're just looking at guesses. My only point in doing this is that I think we need some sort of basis for using the numbers we use. I mean, yes, they're guesses, but we're not just, either we're just picking them out of the air or we're not. And in this case, I thought we got, 2 sets of numbers from the consultants, and they happen to be different. And yes, they're both guesses, but why are they different? What's going on? And so I emailed Mark and asked him what was going on and which one I should use. And he responded that he didn't know where the numbers from, he looked around, he said he couldn't track down where the numbers in chart 50 came from, so I should go with the numbers in the spreadsheet. And at the time, so I thought, okay, fine, that sounds good. I emailed back and said so, and said, by the way, though, you might want to consider changing the chart, because, and I mentioned chart 46 because in fact, there are 4 charts that use these same numbers. The 4 charts differ in terms of chapter 70, total chapter 70 scenarios, this chapter 70 simulated aid up here. And they also differ by the regional budgets up here in the top right of this chart. But all the numbers, and the numbers down the bottom vary based on changes to those 2 top numbers. But the minimum required district contribution does not change, because that has nothing to do either with the total chapter 70 aid or with the district budget. That's all, and that's based on the town's ability to pay. So those numbers were the same in all the charts, and based on my email exchange with Mark, all those charts were wrong. And the other thing that happened in the course of this is going back to an earlier chart. Here we have enrollments for Gil Montague and for Pioneer. These are foundation enrollment figures. They're on chart 48, okay?
Thank you.
And I thought, well, let me see if I can, oops, what just happened here? There we go. I thought, let me make sure I know where these come from, because these were just presented in the report. And to be frank, I mean, they present a number of different enrollment figures in the report, and they don't always mesh with each other. So I thought, let me just make sure that I know where these are coming from. So I figured they were foundation enrollment because that's what's used for chapter 70. So I went out to the state's website and looked at the preliminary chapter 70 figures for FY21, which is what the consultants said they used, and discovered that their numbers were very close, but not quite the same. And so I thought, okay, fine. I'll use the numbers from the state because there's no real reason for them to be different from these numbers. and we'll go from there. So what I did, I mean, Mark had agreed to change the charts. But in the end, he only ended up changing chart 46. As you can see in 46, Gil's minimum contribution is the 1,004,194. And then we have 47, which has the enrollment figures, which show percentages for enrollment, which are used. And then we have chart 49.
Excuse me, Mike,
Yes,
on those enrollment figures, are those foundation enrollment?
yes, they are.
Oh, okay, because they're not actual.
No, they're not. They're not in-class enrollment at all.
Right, okay,
And that's a whole separate question, but
Right.
they're the enrollment figures that the state uses for to calculate chapter 70 and also to apportion the local contribution among the districts. And I believe, I know in Gilmonti's case, it's true. I think it's true in Pioneer. They're also the figures used to apportion the above minimum contribution
no,
from
Yes.
the towns.
but
Yeah.
in our district, it's the actual enrollment, it's your average actual enrollment.
Okay.
So you mean by regional agreement, because that they won't be
Yes, by
following that.
By regional
Yeah, the
agreement,
regional-
by
yeah, well, they don't
regional,
follow. Okay, well, unless you saw that's how they calculate it, the regional
I-
agreement calculations went out the window. And the state said, here's how you're gonna, what applies is the 5-year rolling average, and all that stuff.
Alan, excuse me, if
Yeah,
you
go
look
ahead.
at your school committee minutes from the last couple of meetings, you'll see one of the documents that Tanya sent out is a 5-year average enrollment. It
Yeah.
hasn't changed yet. It won't change until our district agreement changes.
Okay, I mean, I understand, but okay. That's not how they calculate chapter 70, but okay, you're
No,
saying.
I know, but
Okay,
that's not what we're talking about right this second. We were talking about how it was apportioned to the towns on the above minimum.
okay. So you're saying in seat is what directs that. I'll go with that for now. I don't want to hold things up. Mike, I'm remembering this presentation you did. Did you do this before? Or or did you explain this to me before? Why do I remember this?
I'm not sure. I might have explained it to you before.
Okay, all right.
I mean, we might have talked about when we were talking about what how to deal with the fact that the numbers were wrong in the report.
Yeah,
Um,
okay, all right. All right, thanks.
Okay, but Jane, that's actually good information. Thank you. That may change what we're talking about here.
Yes,
Because basically, as I'm saying, here you see Gil in chart 49 is the 1,008,000, which is incorrect. So what I've done in the charts that I put together, and here they are. Okay. I used the required local contribution numbers from DESI and the foundation enrollment figures, which I added a new row just to show what they are.
Yes.
Okay. Because, and then I projected out, well, basically these are just the charts. Okay. So I guess this, based on what Jane just said, I should go back and look and see. Because essentially the way this works is you start with the budget, okay? And most of you probably already know this, but you start with the budget, you subtract all of the money that's coming in from other places, which is this column right here.
Mhm.
Chapter 70, transportation, et cetera, et cetera. And that's all, that's, the sum of that is this, is right here. You subtract that from the top line budget and you get the amount to be assessed from the towns. Okay. You then take your required minimum contributions here, which are set by the state. Totals over here, you subtract that. In Gil and Montague's case, they each have a debt payment that they make. That's just on the, each individual town has its own number. So those are their, part of their contribution, but they don't apply to how the rest of the contribution is divided up. So that gets subtracted out. Transportation gets subtracted out. And what you end up having is the excess, what they call the excess of net school spending. And here in the consultants call that by foundation enrollment. Okay. And that excess is then divided up among the towns. And in these charts, I basically took the foundation enrollments and used them to apportion out the division among the towns. So from what Jane is saying, that was not correct for Pioneer. I should have used in-class enrollments, although that introduces another wrinkle because I assume in-class enrollments are actually smaller than foundation enrollments.
They are, and it's a rolling average for the past 5 years.
Right. But that would,
So I
that would-
think,
So Pioneer's business manager told me at a budget committee meeting when I said Warwick has 19 kids in elementary and 19 kids in junior high, senior high, 38 kids. And if it weren't for the 5-year averaging, we'd be 5% or 6% of the Pioneer budget and not 9 because of the 5-year averaging. And she said, fine, the new district agreement will take care of that because it is based on foundation enrollment. And she went on to suggest that foundation enrollment is every kid the district could be responsible for, including homeschool kids. And I believe the truth is that it's any preschoolers who are receiving services, you know, that have an ed plan or something. It's all the kids enrolled. It's all the kids that the district is paying for at charter school or any kind of outplacement. And that's foundation enrollment, not the theoretical add in 16 homeschool kids, add in 2 kids who are at NMH. Those are not foundation agreement. Do we agree that that's the definition of foundation enrollment?
foundation
Yeah, you're
enrollment
correct.
is all the
You're correct.
kids
There's no
who the
school
district is
choice in
responsible
there.
for.
School choice, yeah.
So there's no school choice, there's no private school, and it's charter
There-
school if it's a public charter school.
No, there
But it
is
counts
school
school choice
choice.
out, right?
Yes,
Pardon?
It counts
It-
school choice sending.
yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's why, some of those numbers are, cause confusion because money in and out goes and what states, what towns get are driven by the foundation enrollment. And then you have your 5-year rolling average on how you're going to assess towns. And that regional agreements are different on that. So you had 2 choices in the beginning of how you were going to do that. And apparently Pioneer, that's the way they went. So now you see, almost like conflicting numbers. How can we be responsible for all these that drive the money in or out? And then we have the assessment on how many are sitting here.
Well,
so
yes,
Mike, you're saying that Gil Montague currently uses the numbers that are in the agreement here, that are in the report. They're
yes.
using foundation enrollment.
Gil Bonahue currently uses foundation to split their above net school spending. And if Pioneer does not, one effect of that will be to basically reduce this 1738 over here. Will not be 1738, it'll be a smaller number. Okay, but Gill and Montague's numbers won't change. So they'll end up being a bigger portion of the net school spending. And I also, I think, I will need to go back and check to verify this, but I think I did verify that the consultants use the foundation numbers when because basically we're talking about these numbers right here. This is
So are
this.
you saying, Mike, are you saying that the consultants use foundation numbers for both Pioneer and for
I
Gil
think,
Montague in their assessment? That's
I
what you're
think they
saying,
did.
right? Yeah.
I'm saying, I think they did. And I should go back and verify that. I mean, they don't have enrollment numbers here. So it's kind of hard on their chart to really double check what they did. But I believe when I plugged the enrollment numbers in, one of the things I did was to go and check and see if it looked like that's what they'd done. I think I did that. And if I did, then it was because there wasn't, otherwise I would have raised a red flag. So I will confirm that. I don't want to take the time now, but that is a question because it means that if we want to do, I mean, maybe it just means that we can't really do 5-year projections. And it also maybe means, I guess what I'm saying is that if Gill and Montague are using foundation and Pioneer is using 5-year rolling average, then we're kind of talking about apples and oranges here in terms of combining the two districts and trying to figure out what percentage of the combined budget each town will be responsible for.
Well, if we become a new district, we will be writing a new district agreement and we will be agreeing on how we're going to be assessed.
Right.
So
Okay.
choose your poison and use that one for everybody. And
Okay.
since foundation is enrollment is what has been used, that's what should stay. And for comparison purposes, we may need to add a line that shows what Pioneer actually gets at the current time. So Pioneer towns can look at their assessment in its current mode and compare it to what will be, because the whole thing here is to project into the future. It's not what we're doing now or what we did in the past. We're supposed to be looking at what's best for the future.
Right.
So
Okay.
So
choose the model and use it.
The new Pioneer proposed district agreement uses foundation.
Agreed.
So I think
Okay.
planning for the future, we should use
Okay.
that.
So should we agree today then that using foundation numbers in these charts is the correct thing to do?
I think it's the best thing to model as being most likely for the Pioneer towns.
Okay. Okay. I mean, I'm not trying to put words in anyone's mouth here.
Oh, go ahead.
But it helps.
Well,
I'm
it does
trying to
solve
do
the
a quick-
confusion.
I'm trying to
It
do
does
a
solve the
quick comparison.
confusion. Yeah.
I mean, I think it simplifies what these charts are doing. I will verify that that's what the charts in the consultant's report actually do. And if it turns out that it isn't what they do, we may have to revisit this topic. But based on the assumption, what my goal today is to get this subcommittee to endorse these charts as an add-on to the consultant's report. Because right now we've got a consultant's report with a chart 46 that shows one set of numbers and charts 49, 50, and 51 and 52. Maybe it's 50, 51, and 52 that show a different set of numbers.
Well, Mike, if I may, Mike, I would suggest appending this, appending your charts to the report. And noting up front that they are appended, and they are appended because they picked up the current figures on the DESI website on such and such a date.
Yes.
So that
Okay.
if somebody else looks at these numbers and says, oh, I was just out on DESI, it didn't look like that at all, and goes back and sees a different number, they can know that DESI changed it since February 28th, when you picked it up, or whatever day you picked it up.
Okay. That was good point, Jane. And the introduction page here, the introduction tab, I tried to explain where all this stuff came from. And I
Yep.
did say I used the figures of the town in different DESI's preliminary Chapter 70 calculations, which can be found at this URL. For those interested, by the way, this is a hugely interesting spreadsheet. This spreadsheet XLSM. DESI produces one of these every year. Actually, a couple of times a year anyway, at least a couple of times a year. And it has a whole bunch of information about Chapter 70 and how it's calculated and what the numbers are.
Right.
So I agree. I think I would like to make it, as plain as possible going forward, why these numbers are as they are, and not something different.
Right.
And I think if we take a vote today, and that is an if, but if we do, I propose that we add a line at the bottom saying these charts were endorsed and approved by the subcommittee to be included with the consultant's report as an addendum.
Right. I'm just looking at your notes and I don't see that you put in a date when you downloaded them.
I can put a date in. The date shouldn't matter because,
Well, it does matter because I'm sure that the Abrams group probably picked this off the same charts.
Right.
And then after they did, Bessie made some adjustments to the charts. And then you went out there.
well, it's possible, but in my experience, when DESI adjusts the charts, they create a new version. They don't adjust something that they've already, they,
Right, they replaced the chart with the same name.
do they?
That's my opinion.
Okay, I haven't seen them do that, but I will happily put a date. These are the preliminary charts for FY21. They're produced after the governor's budget comes out. Then their final charts, which are produced usually, that's like end of January. Then there are final charts which come out whenever the legislature and the governor see fit to finalize the budget, but it's usually over the summer. And actually for FY21, there was a third iteration that came out even later. And
So
there may have
are all three of them out there to look at now?
I believe so. And there may be even, I haven't looked recently. But typically there are at least two. There's the preliminary, which comes out in January, which always changes in some way, although the foundation numbers don't always change. You'd think that they would know what the foundation's numbers were in January, and since they're based on the previous year, there shouldn't be a lot of question, but I don't want to swear that they never change, but typically a bunch of other stuff does change. In particular, the total Chapter 70 amount, if they do a so many dollars per student, what that is, and things like that. So, and that's all, in the final budget. And so there is a version that comes out whenever the budget has finally been passed, usually in July or August, that shows all those new numbers. But I will be glad to put the date. I've got a date on the spreadsheet that I downloaded. I download these things typically every year, just so I have them on hand. So I can put that date in for when I downloaded it.
So Mike, you're looking for, if I'm understanding you, you're looking for one of your subcommittee members to make a motion to include these charts as an addendum to the report. Is that correct?
I'll make that motion with
Yes.
that Jane has suggested regarding the source and the dating.
Second.
Okay, and I will add that, I think what I will do, okay. No, sorry, I will scratch that. So I will add a note about the date when these foundation figures and foundation enrollment figures were taken. And also add a note, if we pass this, that we have endorsed it. So any further discussion by anyone? I want everyone to feel comfortable with this. I mean, if we don't feel comfortable, we shouldn't do it.
We got a motion in a second. You'll
I do,
find
but
out
so I'm
when-
looking for
when they vote.
discussion. I'm looking for discussion. Anyone want anything further to
I
discuss?
think we've had good discussion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Alan, you're gonna vote?
I can if you want. I mean, I support that. I'm ex officio, so I never know if I should be voting or not.
Well, I think
I
ex
will.
officio just means that we can't throw you off.
Oh,
That's my take.
all right. I'll support the motion. I like the way you think, but I
Okay.
wouldn't mind if you threw me off.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I will make those changes. And I will send along a completed copy and also to Greg so he can put it on the website. Or I mean, Greg hasn't gotten back to me. He's supposed to show me how I can put stuff up there, and I'm sure he's very busy, but okay. Moving along.
Can I make one other, and this is just something to think about. And I don't know how the other people feel, but Jane's point may be hidden, in the background of how people, it explains why you can see two different numbers in the district. And you might want to put something on there that makes it clear that the foundation, one district is using foundation, another Pioneer is using a 5-year rolling average, just sort of as a note. So people would have a better understanding of why numbers might be a little different. It's just, we don't take any action on it. It's just a thought. It's just a thought that you might want to consider it in your little explanation.
Well, I'm happy to consider it. My personal reaction is that would just be more confusing for people.
Okay,
But
I'm fine with that.
what do other people
You're
think?
chairing.
Well, I mean, what do other people think? Because the reason I say that is we aren't showing any of those other numbers anywhere in those reports. And if it's true that the consultants used foundation enrollment, then arguably they were incorrect. But if foundation is going to be used going forward, I just think that we're kind of throwing,
The only Mike, Alan's suggestion is valid when community members start looking at these reports, if they actually do. And any knowledgeable community member knows what their town's assessment is. And they'll look at that and they'll say, it's not right.
Right. The thing is that
Right.
it isn't what's, I mean, what we're looking at is charts for a combined budget. So actually, it doesn't represent anything real.
Yeah, but I think to have explanations,
I mean, if when, at some point, we'll be comparing those numbers with actual numbers from actual separate budgets.
mhm,
Well, I don't see why you couldn't put another paragraph in your explanation of your spreadsheet or your introduction to your spreadsheets stating that currently Gil Montague uses foundation budget and Pioneer uses actual 5-year rolling enrollment,
Okay,
Right.
5-year
Okay.
average. How
okay,
Yeah, yeah. You're just saying.
your
that-
rolling
Making
average.
it clear that. Yeah,
So that, you
I
know,
like that. And
so that the Jane Dutchers out there who look at it and the Mike Naughton people who look at it will
Okay.
not be finding fault with us.
well, we have to try to avoid that at all costs, I think.
Oh, I know. We're here, so thank
Oh.
God for that.
So, okay, that sounds reasonable. I'll be happy to do that. David, any comments? Lynn?
No, I got an open floor plan here. I had to go feed the wood stove, but I could hear everything.
Okay,
mhm.
okay. Next item on the agenda is talking about desired deliverables. And I had sent around a document. And I don't know if other people had things they wanted to talk about that we want to get.
Len, I couldn't see you before, so it's nice to see you. You were blocked by the screen. And I didn't know you were here until you started talking.
Okay, I'm having trouble locating my copy of that.
Which copy is that?
That was of the, we were looking for the deliverables. For the new grant.
It was attached to your email. Does that help?
It may, yep. I thought I had it right here in one of my folders.
While he's doing that, David, your stove must be very hungry because I found chairs out on the lawn that took off, a grill blown over. Man, those winds are howling out there. Unbelievable.
Well, it makes me wish I had 2 dampers on it because with really dry wood, I've got the stove closed up completely and the damper closed completely, and a charge will last about 4 or 5 hours in this wind. But I am getting some heat out of it instead of it all going out through the roof. But I've actually known people to put 2 dampers on a stovepipe.
Huh. Oh, that's interesting. I haven't heard of that.
Some old timers
Well,
would
you must
throw a
be
piece of
toasty warm then.
greenwood in to stretch the fire too.
Yeah, and then they get creosote buildup in a chimney fire.
Well, I was a wood dealer for years and I didn't know how to burn wood. I burned bad wood really hot. I didn't clean my chimney for 25 years.
Oh, my gosh.
Mm.
I didn't need to. I was burning it hot. And
Well-
my neighbor taught me when I moved here, every morning, burn a bunch of paper, burn a really hot fire. Basically, try to start a chimney
Yeah,
fire every day.
Yeah, Tractor Supply has that product which I used this year for the first time. And you put just a little cup, very little, every like 3 or 4 days. You just throw it in when you have a medium fire, and it literally it burns the creosote, it flakes it, and it falls down. You just open up your, well, I have a door that I can open up, and
Yep.
I am just filling up a bucket with the stuff that falls out. So food for thought.
Uh,
Yes.
Okay, I got it.
All right, that was the commercial.
Um, what's your guys' pleasure? Do you want me to share it on the screen? Or
Yeah.
should we just look at it and talk? I mean, look at it individually and talk about it.
Now go ahead and share it on the screen. That way I won't have to look for it.
Okay, hang on one second. Okay, get you guys over here. Actually, I think we can do this better this way. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yep.
Now, I'm open to suggestions. But my thought is that it might be good to have some official votes on at least something. So we don't just have a discussion
Right.
and all go away thinking that we all know what we talked about, and then later on, not being really clear on what it was.
Okay, so the object here is to choose the deliverables we want to be written up in RFPs. Is that correct?
I believe so. Alan,
Yes.
maybe you could confirm that.
Yes.
You're the one who asked for
Yes.
this stuff, so.
And the reason is that we didn't really direct the last one. Someone did it for us. And this is, I hope, the last deep dive we're going to take before some recommendation percolates up. So this is a chance for the subcommittee, particularly the finance for this area, to really have have the consultant work with you to get you the information that you think you will need in order to make an intelligent decision in whatever your recommendation is going to be at the end of this process.
Okay. Well, I suggest that we start at the bottom and work section by section and work our way up, because the bottom two sections seem pretty straightforward to me. And it's the finances where it seemed like we might have more discussion. And so if we leave that to the end, we can spend as much time as we want discussing it. So starting with facilities, my suggestion was that we ask for, we get facilities reports, either in addition to or instead of the ones provided by Gil Montague, based on our assessment of whether the ones we get from Gilmontague are sufficient or whether we want more than that. And the other thing was to get an analysis of how combining into one facility instead of two facilities might affect the budget. And that would include what would be entailed in mothballing the unused facility. So reactions to those additions, are they both things that we all want?
Well, are you
think-
asking? Oh, go ahead, Jane. Go, Jane.
I think that the first thing we have to do, if we're going to include something like this, is we have to define what we mean by facilities report. I know I'm being naive, but I think that to say I want a facilities report on each building is
Oh, yeah,
too
we-
broad a definition to get what we need.
Yeah, it's got to be fleshed out. You're absolutely right.
Okay,
So,
well, this
so
is
you're-
not my area of
you're-
expertise, so.
Well, so
So Dan-
some of the kinds of things that we would want to have analyzed, especially in this day and age, is the as-built
ventilation.
ventilation system. Yeah. And then we'd want to look at other mechanicals, in terms, so we'd know if we were walking into, needing to do major replacements,
Okay.
if and when, and what kind of energy saving work we might be facing at a site.
Come on, Jeff.
Yeah, the adequacy of the space, to close a facility and put everything into one.
So what did you say about energy, David?
We'd like to know about all the mechanical systems, the boilers, the AC, anything like that might be, middle-aged or elderly, and one of the things I'm pushing around Warwick is that we have a plan that maybe doesn't include just fixing like for like, but take an opportunity that when a couple of big boilers need replacing, to look at something else. So we ought to look at the energy efficiency and what measures could be
Right.
accomplished. It shouldn't be, indicting the facility because it has needs. We just need to know what they are and what our plan forward would be.
Right, and we are only discussing the two high schools. We're
Correct.
not talking about any of the elementary schools in this regard.
Well, we have in the past, right? We have included the elementary schools. Or at least we've talked about whether we want to do that.
Yeah, we've talked about whether they're going to remain the property of the towns and the responsibility of the towns, or how much of it comes into the new district, right?
Right.
Well, how about this? How about if the work we scope for the elementary is a less in-depth look?
bring her phone. Sorry.
I
David, how do you feel about, we already know that both districts, I think both districts, at least we know Gilmontague was already is undertaking a review of all theirs. So, so we're not duplicating things. Why don't we, just bring their information, into the report as an addendum that we include, based on their assessment of the elementary.
Yeah,
Just
it
a
would be
thought.
good to have some kind of common tool, so we were getting the same information across, but
I have not looked at the reports that we got from Joanne Blyer. Has anybody else looked at them?
I can't admit to it.
You mean regarding facilities? Regarding
Yes.
facilities?
Yes, regarding facilities.
I don't know if they were available yet, were they? Weren't they just finishing up?
Joanne sent them to me and I passed them along.
Oh,
I think I did.
Oh, boy.
Well, some of them are, not all of them were available.
right.
But the ones, I think she had Sheffield and Hillcrest. She didn't have Gill School and she didn't have the high school.
So,
But maybe,
Montague did those on your buildings, right? That was a Montague project to do the
Yes.
elementary buildings. Yeah.
yes, I just wonder, I guess my question is, do they seem like a good model for what a facilities report should be? And
I didn't get those.
I didn't see that either.
okay,
I printed out everything that I thought came through.
So David, I think we're saying that we look at how Gil Montague did that. And so we try to model that and have the consultants do a similar thing, or we find someone who do a similar thing for Pioneer. Because they don't have that in their budget, right? And so we could do that work for them as part of the grant. Correct?
Sure.
Yes.
Yes,
And I think Warwick's elementary school ought to be included because in all probability, it's part of the mix if Warwick's involved in this sixth town.
Mm-hmm,
okay.
I agree.
Yes, I agree too.
I've had quite an education because I'm in charge of that building and I've had a constant stream of vendors coming at me to do all kinds of tests and perform services. I didn't have a clue.
Send us a
So-
list.
Is the David, did the when you were looking and mentioned mechanical and ventilation and stuff, did they do an assessment like on the well or on the you have to have it tested and all that stuff repeatedly, but did they assess that aspect of the facility? Would we
or
Because-
did we?
Well, I guess would we, because you have a septic there, right? So you have a whole septic system and it works and the water system.
Yeah, I mean, the good news is that the building's about 21 years old and we've still possessed multiple copies of the drawings and so it's not going to be as big an investigation. We pretty much have all the data. I mean, I can tell you where there's only 3 manholes where the plan said there were 4 and, a few changes. And
Well,
depending
I guess
on
I'm
whether
asking,
depending on whether we stayed with the towns owning their own elementary schools or not, it would be of more or less concern to the new district.
all right, well, this, what you've identified as a facilities should give you enough, enough information to have a good overview. Because you're not getting into the structural part of the building. You're looking at the mechanical.
Yeah, but we
system.
would like to know if the roof is 3 years old and failing or
Oh, yes.
5 years old,
Yeah.
and should have been done last year, et cetera.
yeah, I think that we
Well, the
did
roof-
the roof, the windows, the walls,
Oh, the whole
Um,
structure.
interior
Yeah,
plumbing,
yeah.
what's the plumbing interior, what kind of shape is that in? I mean, I guess the question is, how specific a list do we need? And maybe Lynn knows. I mean, I know I went through this a little bit. I mean, if you're selling a house and the buyer says, I want to get a home inspection, they just hire someone to come and do a home inspection. I don't think anybody sits and lays out what that person is supposed to be looking at.
That's
That
right.
person has a checklist of some
Yeah.
sort of
Yes,
things that they do look at, and then they produce a report.
right.
And
How
is
simple-
that what we're talking about here? In which case, can we say we want facilities reports, similar to or whatever. David, you got your hand raised?
Yeah, let's see what the Mass School Building Authority has. I'll bet they've got a whole assessment tool for adequacy of buildings and such that would be quite useful. Because
Okay.
they're the ones that make grants, significant grants for school construction. They've got to have some sort of a go, no go gauge as to, what's substandard, what's, what looks like you guys are out of your mind. You got to find school. We're not coming to it with money.
With a good inspection, I mean, just on a simple house inspection on a residential one with a good inspector, you'll get about a 40-page report that covers everything from soup to nuts. And I think that's what we want the equivalent of.
Hey, I got two limbs
David, I
on
think
my
that's
meeting.
Yeah, I can't see her at all, so I just hear this voice coming out of somewhere. But David, I think you have a great suggestion, and I think Mike, you can just say including but not limited to, and you list these things to give them a general idea of what you're looking for. But whoever suggested, but you leave the rest up to their the competency of consulting the school building authority and they have their checklist. They know what they're looking at. So they'll have things that we didn't think of. So
I guess, I'm looking for someone, if they want to make a motion. I don't see myself necessarily personally asking for this stuff. It all sounds like good ideas, but this is coming from the committee, and I think Jane's suggestion earlier on was a good one. We don't want to, we want to avoid hand waving wherever possible. If we say we want to get a report, we should specify what it is we're looking for. I like David's suggestion that the Mass Building Authority may already have some sort of guidelines or checklist or template or something of what constitutes an appropriate report. But do we want to verify, do we want to find out if they do, what is it? Is it as simple as saying we want a report that meets the specifications of the Mass Building Authority? Is that all we need to do?
No, absolutely not. No. And I'll tell you, having done, I think I did 7 buildings. There's a lot of money. When you start talking about that, they're going to, that'll be so comprehensive. The 78,000 or whatever we got wouldn't even begin to assess what they would expect. So I think, giving them a general overview of what you feel is important. And then if they have some other things that they suggest, run with it. But this all came about, remember, from someone saying, can't we just have like a general house inspection, and so I think you got a good, you don't want to be using like 90% of the money to assess to do this assessment.
Well, that seems like a good idea. Again, I'm not the expert here, so I'm hoping that someone else will step forward and say, here's what we're looking for.
Well, I think you got that, don't you? Ventilation, mechanical, any suggestions, energy savings initiatives? You've got adequacy of space, use of space.
I don't think that adequacy of space and use of space comes into the facility.
Okay.
We want to know if the building is sound. We don't want to know if it'll hold 20 kids or 200 kids.
I would agree. I just wrote it down. I heard it.
That's okay. You can write. It's good to save that. But I'm just, if we want to give a list to you of what we think RFPs should include, or there should be several RFPs. One of our suggestions is this, the stuff you just read. I'm not going to read it again.
Yeah.
Well, do we
And I
wanna
would
add-
move
that's
that we
enough to
put
know.
that on our list of deliverables that we think are important and that we move on to another one.
do we want to add structural to that?
Yes, I thought we had structural.
Okay, Dallin didn't mention it. Jane, would you want to read the list of what you have?
Well, I don't know how thorough it is.
Well,
It's
I think
not
that's what we
thorough,
need to
because-
do. I mean, either we nail it down now or we agree that someone's going to nail it down and we have to meet again.
I have ventilation system, mechanical systems, energy efficiency, structural efficiency. And my question was if the septic and the well systems come under mechanical.
No,
Certainly the heating and the plumbing come under mechanical.
yeah,
No, it wouldn't.
What about electrical?
not really. I mean,
All right,
not in the way the trades
utilities, how about
Okay.
utilities evaluation?
Okay. And
Does that
Jane,
cover
you would
the
say,
waterfront? Utilities would also tell us whether the building is accessible. From the building, is the internet accessible? That comes under utilities.
okay, Jane, you had mentioned structural efficiency. We want not really efficiency.
You might want to use the word integrity, structural integrity.
and energy efficiency.
That sounds good.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
was the separate
I
one. There's
had energy
and-
efficiency and I just had structural. I didn't have any adjective with that.
Yeah, maybe
Okay.
integrity.
Perhaps
Okay.
word
Okay.
systems.
I mean, my preference is that we end up here with a motion that we can, that lists what we think we're looking for. And that way when we go back and look, it's all right there.
So move.
Well,
Okay, a facilities report including ventilation system, mechanical system, energy efficiency, structural integrity, utilities, source and availability. Source and available. Source and what? Integrity.
Are you talking about water and sewer? What are you trying to get at?
Yeah, utilities would be electric, water, sewer, internet, telephone. Yeah, Warwick's way out there in the woods. Maybe they don't have any of this stuff.
All right, before that's seconded, can I just suggest so that we have
Well,
that
if-
door open a little bit, if the consultant opens up, something else we missed, your motion says including but not limited to, and then that gives you some flexibility if they come back and say you might also want to look at this.
Sure.
that sounds good. But Jane, I mean, we were talking about the utilities and I'm thinking we want something in there to find out, look at water, for example. We want the source of the water, but what's the interior plumbing? What shape is that in?
Well, that's part of the mechanical system, isn't it? The shape
Is
of the plumbing,
Is it?
the
I don't
plumbing
know. Is
system.
it? David, Lynn, is that?
I would think so, because you got boilers and stuff that are pushing this stuff through and heating it, and I don't
Well,
know.
what about the sinks and the toilets? Is that mechanical?
Now, just call that plumbing.
So we want, I mean,
We want the
maybe,
plumbing, the
maybe just add the
electrical,
words,
plumbing, the
plumbing and
electrical, the mechanicals, which are the ventilation, air conditioning, heating. Adequacy of the kitchen to handle more kids.
well, maybe just condition. I mean, again, I think to Jane's point is adequacy. I mean, if we find out what shape the condition is in, then we can judge whether that's adequate for what we think might or might not happen, right?
Plumbing, electrical, heating, kitchen.
And I guess electrical includes like computer hookups and things, right? Network wiring throughout the building.
Yeah, it's getting
Oh.
to be pretty much wireless so that it's mostly a matter of, do we have enough outlets to plug in to charge laptops these days?
Yeah.
Right.
I know it's scary to see what happens in some schools these days. I need another outlet in my room, and they, the janitor comes along and puts one in and just hooks it to some other outlet.
Well, when they built the schools, they put one in the front, one on the side, or one in the end of the back of the room, and they say, that's enough. And we have a lot more technology. Let me do. Len sent something and said apparently her audio is not. She's trying to share and she couldn't. So she was suggesting that we use language about all the systems. So try to do something more generic and so I don't know if I'm capturing it right, but I think she's saying use language about all systems and try to do it that way, which makes sense.
I agree with her.
Now? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, I finally got the screen back.
Okay, so
Did you have suggestions for language, Len, about use language about all systems? Did you have an idea of what
Yes,
that might be?
I think make it, all encompassing so that it includes everything rather than being specific. Like when you write an insurance policy, it's a comprehensive policy. That's what we want. We want a comprehensive inspection.
so what language would you suggest then?
To include all systems. A building inspection to include structural and all systems. Because that will include your septic, your plumbing, your electrical, and so, etc.
A facilities report to include all structural and all systems, as well as energy efficiency and source of utilities.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds.
I just going down the list that you guys have been saying and condensed it to that. Does that sound?
Okay. And do you want to follow Alan's suggestion, say to include, but not be limited to?
Yes. I agree.
Okay, a facilities report, including but not limited to
Because then you can include your pest inspections, your radon analysis, things like that, that will, inquire bringing in other people.
Okay, a facilities report, including but not limited to an evaluation of structural and all other systems, as well as energy efficiency and utilities sources and utility.
Yes, and maybe include the words of radon inspection and pest inspection. Because that doesn't, that's not including systems, that's something separate, but it's something in New England that I think we have to pay attention to.
Okay,
And once you use the words comprehensive system, you could just say IE and just list these as examples.
Agreed.
Technically, that should be EG, but
I mean, e.g. for examples, yeah, and just do it like that.
okay, structural and all other systems, e.g. energy, utilities, radon,
Pest,
pardon,
pest. Like
pests,
pest, P-E-S-T. In other words, do we have termites? If you have wooden structures, then you got to worry about termites. Carpenter ants, especially if you got any water leaks.
Wouldn't that be structural?
No,
No?
Depends
No.
where they're eating.
if you've got, yeah, if you've got evidence of, that's not necessarily going to be structural. Sometimes it can affect the structure. And if you leave them alone, indeed, it will affect the structure, but it might not be affecting the structure now. So that requires, how do you say, a special inspector?
Do we have any wood buildings?
I'm sure we have wood in all the buildings at some,
Right. It's a
To
long,
Liv's point, when they're eating the trim, that's not structural.
no, but if they make a tunnel up the side of the foundation and get inside and start on the floors.
Yep.
Which termites can do.
Yeah.
I think we're getting too detailed.
I do too. Because I think we have about $50 left.
uh,
Well, next meeting, we have to rank all this then. In case we're at $50 underwater.
okay.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to list this as one of our potential deliverables.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So that was unanimous?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, something tells me we're not going to get through everything today, okay? Do we want to talk about combining districts into one facility? Do we
We
want to get
definitely
any kind of
study it.
analysis of that, or,
I don't think we should have sacred cows.
okay? Do we want to say anything more than what I've said, which is analysis of how combining districts into one facility would affect the budget and what the cost of mothballing unused? I mean, that's pretty general.
Well, I don't think we should use the word mothball. I think we should talk about reuse, repurpose.
Yes, repurpose.
Well, how about cost associated with the unused facility? And that could be based on whatever ends up happening with it.
Yeah, but that also could be a revenue source, and I think that's what David was getting at.
Depends on who owns the building.
Mhm.
Yeah, how about maybe how about the costs and potential revenues of the unused facility?
Or potential use.
Right, or
And
that sounds
may
good.
or may not.
The potential use of an unused facility. I mean, again, this is going to
Someone make
be,
a motion quick.
I so move.
Thanks a
Okay.
lot, David.
Jane, you got that?
I'll second it.
Okay, so we're going to ask for an analysis of how combining districts into one facility would affect the budget, and the potential use of the unused facility. Is that what we're asking for?
Yes.
Okay. Further
Potential
discussion?
I would call it
Don't be
reuse.
surprised if I reword that. What is the
Yeah, please
effect of
do.
combining the district into one facility? And how would the other facility be utilized?
Please do, because you're
That
actually
sounds
writing
good.
a big part of the RFP,
That
RFS.
sounds good. Well, we don't want to get too far away from what we vote in the meeting, though, because we can get into trouble. So, but that sounds good to me, Jane. So that's our friendly amended motion here.
David,
Further-
Mike, why don't we leave, how do you feel about leaving 5 up to you, the 5-year budget projections for a combined district using budget? You've got so much knowledge there to pay someone else to do what you're very good at doing. I don't know, it's just a thought.
Well, hey, hold that thought, because we haven't voted on this yet.
Oh,
Read it back, please.
Okay.
Jack.
Oh, no.
What I said.
No, what Jane said.
All right, here's what I wrote. Get the exact wording from the recording. basically, I think I said, the effect on the budget of combining the district into one facility and the use of the other facility. Well, it's something
Potential
like that,
use.
Yeah.
Yeah, potential use. of the other
potential use,
facility.
yeah.
Potential
And-
reuse,
Reuse,
yeah.
okay. Anyway, I'm gonna take it from the recording,
Okay.
Yeah.
when I
Okay,
get
so-
the
Said it.
recording.
Further discussion on this? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
I,
Opposed? So that was unanimous. Any extensions?
Yep.
Okay,
Mike, you might just want to really quickly as you do this, because this is public, just to say, roll call vote, David, Jane, Len, Mike, Alan.
Okay,
Just so that we're
okay.
doing this correctly.
okay, next time.
Yep.
Let's talk quickly of the transportation. I think we may be all pretty much agreed on that. Having met with Joanne, I'm suggesting we simply get the transportation report that she described to us, the one that she said she had been hoping for and didn't get.
I'll make that motion.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I second.
Okay, discussion?
Well, the only discussion is we may have a hard shut off on June 30th. And she did say that she wouldn't be able to get to it until after that. So there'd have to be an extension. So just
Okay.
keep that in mind. And that might be something that we maybe ask the towns to appropriate a little money or something to continue that and get that done. So, I mean, you should vote on it because that's something you want to happen. Just the timeline might not line up, and just be aware of that,
Okay,
according to her.
okay. Okay, other
can
discussion?
I read this to you?
Please.
Yes.
Transportation report, starting with potential enrollment as described by Joanne.
Flyer.
Thank you. Is that cover? I mean, we don't want them to start with the routes that we have now. That was the problem with the report we got.
Right,
We want an original.
Well, that's why I said starting with potential enrollment.
Yep.
right, okay.
Yep,
Any further discussion? Okay, I'll do a roll call vote. Lynn Reynolds. Alan, you want to say aye, Lynn?
I did.
Oh, you did? Oh, okay, sorry. Alan Genovese,
Yes.
David Young,
David, yes.
Jane Dutcher,
yes.
and Mike Naughton, yes. Okay, well, it's now almost 6 o'clock. And I was hoping not to go too much longer than this. But we've got a good deal done. I think we've done some good work here. Alan, to your suggestion, I mean, thank you for the compliment. What I'm really looking for here, and I tried to lay it out in a very detailed form, which has pluses and minuses because there's a lot of trees here instead of one big woods. But my vision is that our committee gets a tool that we can use going forward. That's the bottom line. That what's important is not so much the numbers that we see in a particular chart, but being able to update the chart as we go along, change the chart based on different assumptions, and see how all that plays out. And based on what the consultants told us, my understanding is that Gilmont U produces its budget in one way and Pioneer produces its budget in a different way. And I noticed that in the consultants report, they kind of pulled figures from one budget or the other pretty much unchanged, which was a little confusing to me because both districts clearly do many of the same types of things. And so even though they may be having different budget structures, they're essentially talking about the same stuff. And so I thought, well, if I'm asking for what I'd like to see those individual budgets, because they're what the districts actually produce and will be producing presumably going forward. I'd also like to see each of those budgets translated into some sort of common form. And in the past, I've heard that I know that the budgets report to the districts report to the state on their budgets, because a lot of that information shows up on the state websites as the towns report on their budgets. And so you can go out and look and see what districts and towns spend in different categories. And so it occurred to me that finding out how to translate each district budget into some sort of common format, and possibly a good one would be the format they use to report to the state. We would take that format and then translate it into a combined district budget, making clear what the assumptions are. In other words, okay, we're only going to have one superintendent, but the pay is going to be 10% higher. We're going to have a new principal at the average pay of the existing principals. Whatever. We're going to have 3 more math teachers. We're going to have 2 fewer something else. And here's how all those things, go together to make a bigger budget. And then project what that budget will look like going forward, which means factoring in assumptions about enrollment and Chapter 70 aid and other sources of revenue and town contributions. And I know that's a lot to ask for, but my goal starting out was to say, well, what would I really like to have? I mean, to me, that would mean that 3 years down the road, we could say, okay, here's the district's budgets at this point. Here's how, here we have a tool that we can take those and combine them into one big budget. We can adjust it, based on our understanding of, well, the staffing would change in this way. And we can see what the impact of that would be.
So you don't think, Mike, that the state already has something like that we could just find and then be able to plug in and do that? And we just haven't figured out how to plug and play?
I don't think the state does projections like that. I don't. They
So
may.
here's what I heard you say. Something like this: you're looking for the consultants to develop a series of Excel spreadsheets that will help the facilities transportation, the finance facilities transportation subcommittee to manipulate, to review and project various simulations in a uniform manner that will help define the financial impact on the towns and in making, future decisions.
Right.
Something like that, I was trying to get, to capture.
Yeah,
I was
I'd say
listening.
the one thing I would add is that both the financial impact on the towns, but also projected district budgets. Because I think part of our
Yeah.
job should be to sort of decide if it's reasonable to, I mean, we've heard a lot about possible educational benefits of combining districts. But what we haven't spent a lot of time thinking about is, are these actually feasible from a financial point of view? In other words, will there be enough money there going forward to make all these wonderful things happen? So, and so it's kind of 2 sides of the same coin. Clearly with an unlimited budget, you can make all kinds of things happen, but at some point it becomes unaffordable for the towns. So then you start looking at, well, okay, if you want to stay up in the affordability for the towns range, what implication does that have for the budgets? And that's what I'm looking for, is a tool that allows us to kind of play with different things. Well, if the towns are willing to spend more, what could we do? If the towns say we can't, we have to start spending less, what are the implications of that?
You want to write up some language? Because that sounds reasonable to ask them to do a tool. I think I tried to capture a broad summary, but the only thing I thought I had missing was to develop projections for future budgets.
Well,
I
I'd say
don't
the
know, you
only,
might want to write something up to capture that, because that'd be nice if we had that.
Yes.
well, I mean, I'll be happy to try to write something up, but this should be coming from the committee, so I don't want to, and
Well, we're not going to finish tonight, right?
well, I guess that's the thing is, should we continue this to another meeting? In which case, Alan, what do you see as our deadline being here?
Well, we were
We're past. the
hoping to
deadline,
get
right?
something by Friday, so something shortly after Friday.
Okay.
And I have another meeting at 7 o'clock.
Okay.
Yeah,
May I-
and you probably need to get dinner.
And may I ask how much the grant was that we received?
77,000.
How many?
What was it, 78,000? I don't have it in front of me, but it's something like that.
I thought I saw 77,000.
Okay.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Good work.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I-
Alan, if we meet next Tuesday, then is that too late?
So Mike, I think your
No,
discussion
that'd be all right.
of what we're trying to, we should want to try to achieve in terms of developing something so that you can, as you were using the words, compare apples to apples. If you could develop the language to, how to say, clearly express in a reasonably concise manner exactly what you're saying here, that sounds like a really good idea.
Okay.
I know that's
I
a
will-
lot of work. But I think you're most capable of all of us to verbalize that in a meaningful manner.
Well, I'm not sure that's completely true, but we got some pretty verbal people here on the committee.
Well, that's
But,
true, but I think you've got some good ideas. I think we all agree with your good ideas. And I think you have some experience and background in trying to do this so that you'll be able to do it in a manner that is clear.
Well, how about if I write something up, send it around, and we plan to meet again
Yeah.
next Tuesday to confirm that it's what we're thinking about, share any other ideas we have, and I mean, does that work for you, Alan?
Yeah.
I have to be
Well,
out at 6. I have another meeting at 6. But the commute's not bad. It's another Zoom meeting.
Okay. In that case, why don't we, on that note, why don't we have a motion to adjourn, and I will set up a meeting for next week.
So made.
You know when you're gonna adjourn, when you're gonna do that next week? Because
Same time, Tuesday, 4:30. We'll hope Michelle can join us.
I'll
Okay.
try to get these up.
4:30?
Okay.
I have- Before we adjourn, I have a question of Alan. Are we trying to write one RFP or more than one?
I think we're going to do a series of RFPs, like all together as a package, and maybe people might have, might
Pick and
wanna,
choose.
yeah,
Yeah.
pick and choose, or maybe say, we'd like to do the whole package, or we can, or we can do this aspect of it. So, the reason I say that is because there was someone who came forward that I think lives in Northfield that seemed to have a strong educational background, and what was her name? I think it was Karen Boudreau was her
Well,
name, but at any rate, she might have an interest on the educational piece. So, so I'd like to, maybe broaden, people and get the word out.
Right.
So,
I'm trying to keep the wording concise and clear.
Yes.
In other words, I don't want to give you and whoever else is going to write Joanne, who's going to write the RFPs, pages of descriptions of what we want. I don't want to confuse
you.
you, and I don't want to confuse the people who might respond to the RFP.
Right.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
The more
Okay.
specific we can be, the better, but kind of leave the door open. I think in the end, when I get these, Greg and I'll probably sit down first and come up with, I don't want Joanne to have to do a lot of work. She's trying to run a district right now. And so, as much as we can do to help her, then she has to take it from there, and it's still a lot of work because she's got to put it out and advertise and, look at the
Yep.
process of people submitting and all of that. So the more we
Okay.
can do, the better. So we would appreciate that, Jane.
The wordier we get, the more in trouble we can get.
Okay. Well, now David's got to go, so
Okay,
Well,
to
no,
be continued.
no, he's talking about next Tuesday.
next week is my,
Oh, next week.
Deadline.
Okay. Well, hopefully next week will be relatively short.
Okay,
Because we'll just have one thing to talk about.
all right.
David, I need to give you a call when we're done here.
okay,
Okay, so we have a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Lynn Reynolds,
Yes.
second,
Alan Genovese,
Yes.
David Young,
yes.
Jane Dutcher,
Yes,
Mike Naughton, yes.
Jane,
Okay,
did you hear that David seconded that motion?
Yes.
Okay.
okay. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming. And Jane, I will get you a link to the recording.
okay, great, thank you. Good night, everybody.
Good night. See you next week.
Jeez.